Hey, I want to welcome all of you guys. I am absolutely thrilled to be here with you guys. Thank you guys that are jumping on with us in different locations all across the campus, and even a lot of you guys are watching at home. It is so good to be back with you. This is my first time in the Clement Auditorium, and for you guys that don't know, this used to be where we did T3 every single week. Like, this was home, and it just feels really sweet, kind of like rolling up in here. It's a little different, looks a little different, but it's okay, because we're here and we're here together. And thank you guys so much that are watching online and in the different spaces. Hop on. If you guys are in other rooms, I would encourage you guys to go ahead and jump on the feed, find it, so that you guys can comment and participate. Cool thing about what T3 is it'll be a conversation, us interacting. And even though we can't all be gathered in one spot, we don't believe that should stop it. Like, that shouldn't keep us from continuing to interact and whatever. So we're going to do that through the chat, and you guys are live here today. So I would love to hear from you, like, out loud and not in the chat this week. If you guys would just talk to me and be a part of the conversation, it's going to make it so much richer. So I'm glad to be here with you guys. My name's Jonathan, and I serve with Chi Alpha. Once again, welcome. We have been going through a conversation. Actually, we started last week, and we're going to kind of pick up this week about the Sermon on the Mount. And before we get into that, I need to ask you a couple questions, all right? So you guys in the chat, are you ready? Here we go. The first question is, what is something, or what does it mean when something creates contrast? When two things kind of, or a situation creates contrast. What does it mean to have contrast?
Differences?
There are differences. Okay, so these things create some kind of noticeable difference. Okay, what else?
Like when I think of contrast, I think of like pictures and stuff. So if something's high contrast, like all the details are like really visible.
Oh, okay. So like in pictures and images, she's saying if something is high contrast, the details and stuff are very apparent. Okay. What does it mean when something has contrast? You guys are blowing up the chat. This is fantastic. It's different from one another. So there's some things that like there's a difference of opinion. Sometimes people are saying in the chat that there's differences that way, that two things have different origins and they kind of converge for the purpose of kind of comparison. Okay, any other thoughts in the room? So when there's like different characteristics, do you think with contrast that those differences cause the differences to be like exaggerated or like intensified? Sometimes can. Cool. All right, so now I need your help, since we've got a bit of an idea. I'm seeing in the chat that they complement each other. Dude, this is great. This is really good. So now that we've got an idea of what contrast kind of is and how it works, can you think, and this will take a second, can you think of some contrasting pairs? Can we make a list of just some pairs that are things that often go together that create contrast? Peanut butter and jelly, girl, that was the first thing that came to my mind. If there's not peanut butter in the chat at least 4 times, like, I'm mad. Okay, here it comes, peanut butter and jelly, peanut butter and jelly. Let's go, peanut butter and jelly. That's good, that's beautiful. That's the Lord right there. We're in unity, go.
Light and dark.
Light and dark, fantastic. It's a pair, creates contrast. I'm saying it again. Cats and dogs, man, there's all kinds of contrast. You got those dogs that think they're cats and those cats that think they're dogs. There's all kinds of stuff happening. That's good. Sweet and salty, and even like sweet and sour, right?
Sweet and spicy.
Sweet and spicy? Woo, sweet's got all kinds of things going on. Everybody wants to be Sweet's friend. What are you guys saying? Uh-oh, Trump versus Biden.
Oh, not starting this. No politics.
Marley and Ethan just came up in the chat. That's fantastic. I'm not really sure. Teal and maroon. I appreciate it, baby. My wife's in the chat. She says, teal and maroon. That's good contrast. I'm thinking, yes. See? That's a girl. So I married her. She appreciates color. That's good. Any other thoughts? Pairs that create...
Hot and cold.
Hot and cold.
Guys and girls.
Guys and girls. Good. Over here. Salt and pepper. Good. A contrasting kind of pair. Maybe 1 or 2 more. Let's see what the chat. Rice and beans, Eric Cabrera. Ow! Plants and animals. I see that. That's good. Sweet and spicy. They said that in the room here. Good. So we understand that contrast is when two things kind of like have some differences and they exaggerate the difference. But sometimes these pairs come together and they make a point. The contrast is there for the purpose of emphasis, almost. Of those pairs that we just listed, and some of you guys saw some and some of you didn't, of the pairs that were listed, do any of them complement one another?
Peanut butter and jelly.
Man, peanut butter is fantastic, but you add some jelly to it, like it's a whole nother thing, isn't it? It's beautiful. Do any of those pairs that we listed that had contrast, do they complement? Yo.
The sweet and salty, the sweet and sour.
Yes. Yes.
Hot and cold might creates neutral temperature.
Yeah, I don't believe that. That's nonsense. No way.
It's not too hot, not too cold.
No, get out of here. No, that's not a compliment. Totally not a compliment. He said sweet and salty, fantastic. Any other ones? This guy's trying to tell me like hot and cold are compliment. No, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Anything else? You don't know. That's good. That's good. We got salt and pepper for sure. Yes. Fantastic. Yes. Heads and tails of a coin creates some kind of complement. Okay.
Pancake.
Say it again.
Syrup and pancake.
Syrup and pancake. Okay. Good complement thing happening there. So last week, what we did is we saw how humility releases every good thing that God has for us. How confessing that I really am nothing and have nothing in comparison to God, how that creates something more together when we're able to just kind of release that a little bit. There's contrast there, but it's a dynamic relationship that creates something more. So salt by itself, pepper by itself, sure, each of them we appreciate for whatever, but you add them together, there's something more than was there individually. They're not acting on their own. There's a complement. So what we're going to do this week is we're going to look at another set of things that are seemingly contrasting, but because they're contrasting, they're creating a complement, something that is more together than they are separately. So if we looked at either of them separately, they'd be like, oh, okay, cool, whatever. But when we put them together, that contrast creates something that's very meaningful for us. So I hope you guys can jump in and hang on. So we've been going this last week and for the foreseeable future through the Sermon on the Mount, in particular, the Beatitudes. So tonight we are going to be talking about Matthew 5, verse 4. If you have a Bible, you can look at that. I'm going to read it for you. And then also, hey, look what I got for you. Yeah. Look what I got for you. Watch me drop it on the ground. Turns out I need an extra hand to do all of this. Grown. Bam. Can you guys see that? Let me see friends in the chat. I'm going to move it a little closer. Yeah, okay. It's there a little bit. It may be backwards, but you guys are smart. Just figure it out. Just work it out. You're really smart. So awesome. So this is the beatitude that we're going to talk about tonight. This is Matthew 5, verse 4. And I was encouraging you guys last week to be the type of people that take some notes, because what we're going to have to do is pull it all apart in order to put it back together in a way that makes sense. But let's just go ahead and read it straight out of the gate. It says, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. We can see the contrast there, right? Blessed because you're sad? By the way, you're going to be comforted. What? So this Messiah guy shows up, and that's what he's offering to people. But let's check it out. We know that these Beatitudes that we're looking at, they're a list of the qualities that Jesus is looking for in his followers. So he's just come onto the scene, and a lot of people are interested in what he's saying and what he's doing. So they're following him. By thousands of people are following this sucker. And he says, well, these are the things that are important if you're going to follow me. So today we're picking up with this contrast. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. And we know from last week, this idea of blessed is not like bless your heart, like the Southern kind of like you need help because you suck. Not like that kind of blessed. So this blessed actually means happy, but it means in a lasting sense. It's not like 1 minute things are fantastic and the next minute things are awful. This kind of happy, this kind of blessed is talking about in a longevity sort of sense, and something that stays with you. It's more than a mood. It's more than an emotion. It's a state of being. So when we say blessed, we're not talking just happy, but we're talking about a sense of fullness and a lasting sense. The next word that we need to spend some time with a little bit is this idea of mourn. And a lot of our conversation is going to hinge on a good understanding of this word mourn. So basically what this means is to grieve And I don't have space. Let's just keep doing it. You guys can figure it out. To grieve and be saddened by things. We're down here, right? You guys ready for an arrow? That's what's up. You got to write so big so people can see it, and then you run out of space. So, to grieve and be saddened by things that sadden God. So this isn't talking about just being sad for the sake of being sad. Sadness for the sake of sadness isn't the point. Jesus isn't just saying like, hey, I'm totally against Prozac. Everyone just be depressed all the time. That's not what this beatitude is about. It's not sadness for just the sake of sadness, but catch this. It's allowing our hearts to move into greater alignment with God's heart. And therefore beginning to share his perspective of brokenness for others. It's not sadness for the sake of sadness. It's a sadness that reflects a sadness that the Father may have. That's a lot to take in, but being sad alone isn't the point. We need to just punctuate it with that. But mourning for what God mourns, that's the point. So Jesus is saying that if you're going to follow after me, your heart needs to begin to mourn the things that I mourn. But here comes the contrast. There's more to it. When we have sadness on one side, we understand this idea of mourning, there's sadness. But then check this out. The other side, we need to understand the contrast, and it's comforted. So he issues this thing of comfort, and it's very specific. It's not just like they're there, but it's very specific what he's meaning when he says comfort. It's to call to one's side, to aid. So there is an emphasis on movement with this comfort. That it's, you're not over there. I'm not comforting you via email or Snapchat. I'm drawing you to my side so that there would be aid. And there's also something sweet, it says, that happens through that comforting process, through that drawing you to their side. It's that you are not alone. I see that you guys can't see that online, but you can catch it. You're following. Let's put it together. So we have this idea of being happy in a lasting sense. We have this idea of mourning, but not just mourn general sadness, but an identification and aligning our hearts with God's heart and mourning some of the things that he mourns. And he says, in that process, there's going to be comfort for you. There's going to be comfort, a drawing you along my side. Let's put it together. This is the Jonathan Miller translation. It says that you will be most happy when you're able to see the way God does. Because even though it'll break your heart, you will be standing right next to God. Let me read it again. You'll be happy in a lasting sense when you are able to see the way God does. Because even though it breaks your heart, you'll be standing right next to him. Let me show you a little bit what this means. So you guys can't see, but about right over here is an awesome lady named Jasmine. Jasmine, would you stand up for a second? They love her. They love her. Jasmine, from where you're standing, can you see my mouse? You can't see my mouse. Okay, how about come up to right here. Come up to like where this yellow extension cord is. Right there is good. Right there is good. So you can't see Jasmine, but she's literally right here. Right here. Jasmine, from there, can you see my mouse? You can see my mouse? Where is it?
Sure.
Huh?
A little bit.
Oh, no, not that mouse.
Oh.
That's like a pad.
Oh.
You can't see my mouse. She can't see my mouse. Why don't you come here? Why don't you come right here? Come right here. Come right here. Look down.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see my mouse?
Yes.
Huh. So it took you coming right alongside me to see something.
Mm-hmm.
Can you guys give Jasmine a hand? I think it's important for us to understand that we can't social distance with God if we're going to see from his perspective. Sometimes we have to be willing to move and become alongside him if we're going to see the way that he sees. And that's part of the whole point of this beatitude, that unless you're willing to reposition your perspective, even if it involves sadness, you're not always going to be able to see the things that the Father sees. God isn't calling us to be crybabies. That's not the point at all. But he is saying that if you are truly going to follow me, then you need to be able to see things from my perspective, or at least be endeavoring to try. You know, this is a huge challenge because right now, the generation that we're in, and even for years before your generation, says that you are the center of the universe. It says that we are the center of our universe, doesn't it? Do whatever makes you happy, right? Good vibes only. This beatitude challenges that point of view. It isn't always what we want that we need to have. So let me ask you, what is necessary in order to see somebody else's perspective? I want to see it in the chat. You guys respond. What is necessary for you to entertain somebody else's perspective? What has to happen? Yes, ma'am. You have to be willing to listen. Awesome. And that involves being present, being quiet. Fantastic. That's good. You have to be willing to listen. Other thoughts?
Being open.
Say it again.
Being open.
Being open. Okay, I'm willing to receive. What are you going to say?
Setting your own opinions aside, so easy to judge from where she is standing. You don't even have to know, just judge like that.
Yeah.
So we can actually, I know that it's common thing, walking from the old shoes, we have no clue what they're going through.
Man, that's fantastic. She's saying for you guys that are online, set your own opinions aside, because until you're willing to do that, you might be in a different spot and you won't be able to see the things that can be seen from that perspective or that vantage point. Really good. What were you going to say?
Maybe to have experienced what they've experienced. That helps to
Okay.
understand.
Having experienced some of the similar things, I'm seeing in the chat, humble yourself. Somebody was here last week. Is it possible that some of these beatitudes build on each other, or that they have commonalities? I don't know. But I'm seeing humility a lot in the chat. You have to accept that you could be wrong. Man, fantastic, fantastic. So we've already started to move exactly where I wanted us to be. And the next question is not only to see somebody else's perspective, but what's necessary for their perspective to begin to become your own. So you've seen it. Jasmine came up here and she could see my mouse that's right here that couldn't be seen from any other space. But what's necessary for us to begin to take on a new perspective? Yes, ma'am.
I guess to work on that. I guess to work on what they're saying, I guess.
Tell me if this is what you're saying, that you have to have like a degree of teachability, that you're willing to kind of like walk through and process the things that they're offering. Is that what you're saying? Awesome. Yeah, that makes total sense to me. That's really good. Other thoughts? What does it take to take on? I'm seeing in the chat that you have to trust in them, but also in God. That there's an idea of open-mindedness, they're saying in the chat. That there's a transferring of a degree of trust. That's fantastic. Any other thoughts? What does it take to take on that new perspective?
Action.
There's going to be some kind of action, right? To just say it all day long, but then to not actually do anything. Did you really? Okay, fantastic. That's really good.
I'd say one of the things to be open and understanding.
Open and understanding. So good. So good. I'm seeing in the chat, there's a degree of sacrifice in this process of taking on somebody else's perspective or somebody else's opinion. Check this out. If we move from our perspective to God's, the immediate result will be that we're no longer the center of the universe. If we start out in a space where I'm the center of the universe and God is over here and he has a different perspective, and we begin to move to that perspective, I've just vacated my spot as the center of the universe. When I begin to entertain somebody else's perspective, things begin to shift. And in particular, in our relationship with God, life is no longer solely about us being happy. when I begin to identify that perhaps God's way of seeing things might be more valuable in situations than mine, then what I'm leaving behind over here is my life mission to be happy. And as a result of seeing things from God's perspective coming along his side, I might be not happy sometimes. I might be sad. I might actually be sad because it turns out the whole world isn't revolving around me anymore. It turns out that I've had to surrender a selfish pursuit in exchange for the Father's perspective, God's perspective. And in that perspective, I might not always be getting what I want. And that makes us sad, doesn't it? We get what we want, we're happy. We don't get what we want, we're sad. Jesus is telling his followers that in order to truly be his disciples, you have to be willing to surrender your worldview for mine. You must be willing to surrender your perspective for mine. Yes, it's going to be different. It's going to be different. I don't care how holy you are, how spiritual, how much of a good person you are. When you surrender your worldview for God's, it's going to be different. Yes, that'll be different because in my world, everything doesn't exist to make us happy, and you may cry in that process. You may be sad, you may encounter sadness, but the truth is, I think of what Jesus is communicating to these people. If you want to be my follower, you'll see not only the world around you, but you'll begin to see your own life. You'll begin to see your own attitudes, your choices, and your desires as the Father sees them. And I think that can make us sad. Have you guys ever had any moments after you've moved through the situation, you look back on it and you're like, man, I wish I wouldn't have represented myself that way. I wish I could take some of those things back. I wouldn't have said that. I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have believed that. When we begin to move ourselves from our perspective and even begin to take a look at our own lives, sometimes sadness is a natural reaction, but you will be comforted. As you begin to take on the Father's perspective over yours, you'll be comforted. And you can't imagine the lasting sense of joy and peace that comes when you're willing to surrender your perspective for his. Let's boil all that down. Final statements and we're wrapping up. Jesus is saying to be his followers, you have to be willing to endure the heartbreak that we're not the center of the universe because he is. Second quality out of his mouth before this whole thing gets started, he says, if you're going to follow me, you've got to be willing to endure the heartbreak that you're not the center of the universe because I'm not sharing it with you. I'm the center, the Father says. And it's important for us to ground it this evening. Only you can decide if the trade is worth it. Only you can decide if you are willing to move somebody else into the center of the universe. And here's a practical step for you this week. Before you form your own opinions about something that's happening in your life, ask God what his is. Let's go ahead and take some time, begin to multiply into your different cores. I'd love for you guys just to chat through a couple more things that have to do with this idea of shifting your perspective and what that might mean for your life. Hey, I love you guys. Have a great night.